Recovery Sort Of is a podcast where we discuss recovery topics from the perspective of people living in long-term recovery. This podcast does not intend to represent the views of any particular group, organization, or fellowship. The attitudes expressed are solely the opinion of its contributors. Be advised, there may be strong language or topics of an adult nature. So, welcome to Recovery Sort Of. My name's Billy. I'm a person in long-term recovery.
I'm Jason. I'm still trying to recover.
And today we're here with Dave. Dave is a Zen, is it monk or priest?
Zen priest.
Zen priest. He is also a person in recovery. He's going to tell us a little bit about his journey, how he found meditation, how it's benefited him in his recovery, and I'm going to introduce Dave. Dave, we'd like to give you a couple minutes to introduce yourself, probably 5 to 8 minutes. Jason likes the 8-minute limit.
Sure, yeah.
Nobody listens, but I try.
No, cut me off, please.
It's always funny because it's like I always think like 5 to 10, and then he's like 5 to 8, which 8 sounds really specific.
I just feel like if any of us talks for more than 8 minutes, then somebody's getting bored.
People zone out.
I do.
So I'm probably rambling on for 8 minutes now, so I better shut
your
up.
Time's up, Billy.
But no, Dave, please introduce yourself. Tell us a little about yourself and what you're doing these days.
Great. So my name's Dave, and I have been in recovery for 11 years. Just celebrated 11 years, and meditation's a big part of my experience. So, yeah, where do I start? I'm not trying to do the whole thing, right? Like, we don't need to do the whole thing. That's for meetings. Right. So, I had a childhood, and a lot of it was great. Some of it was not, right? And it had a profound effect on me, and I went to the Marines, and there's kind of some shifts that happen to you mentally in the Marines as well that are really positive. And then some maybe not, right? Some are very difficult, especially when you're coming back to the world, right? And, trying to function. The coping mechanisms you develop in the Marines are very different and very unacceptable in the world, right? One way to deal with things, stress there is, fight your friends. You just go to a pit in the ground, you fight your friends and headbutt them in the nose and you hug and, then you go surfing together and everything's good. Like, glad I've got that out. Right. So
Fight Club.
It's my new parenting
exactly,
technique.
right. Exactly.
It's Fight Club.
Exactly. Yeah. I never connected that, but of course. So coming out of that and, getting into college and everything like that, it's just, had some adjustment, challenges that made life pretty hard. And using became a big part of that coping mechanism, because it kind of works for a little bit, or at least it seems like it does, until it doesn't. Then when it doesn't, it really doesn't, and it never does again. So just long dark story there, which will kind of just say that much about it. And I got help a couple times, and back up a little bit. I always had interest in meditation, right? Since I was becoming an adolescent, I had a lot of interest in breaking out of, my kind of cultural family tradition. I just had questions. I had too many questions, right? Not too many. I had a lot of good questions, and so, I was always looking for other things. And so when I got help, I'd already been meditating on my own a little bit, and I met a psychotherapist who, had a meditation every morning, and I started doing that every morning. And then when I left treatment, I just continued doing that with him. I'd go back and just sit with him and the other guys, and, reached a point after practicing on my own, a little bit of that for a couple of years, where I was like, I need a teacher. This isn't going to go any further by itself. And that's a very common experience. So I found a teacher in Lansdowne, PA, at Soji Zen Center, Soji. And definitely seemed like the right teacher for me. It is a way more formal Zen center than my understanding of many others. I haven't been to a lot of others, but this is my understanding that we're very much on the formal side. Like we have priests there, and no ways better or worse or anything like that. It's just a different approach. So, gosh, I think I joined there in probably 2013, and I believe I was ordained in 2015. I should know these dates a little bit better, but boy, time just goes. You've got a family, and you're trying to do this, and you're trying to do that, and you got a full-time job, and I'm in grad school right now too. My brain is just. So hopefully I can make a little bit of sense in this podcast today. I just came out of finals on Wednesday, so what that's about. I'm in graduate school right now to get my Master of Social Work. So I want to kind of take the work I've been doing for education, which is all social emotional learning and like restorative discipline for students that are often labeled at risk, and just kind of get more abilities to serve in a different capacity as well. So I want to go serve probably veterans for a while. So I don't know what mark I'm at, but so I was ordained. I'm a novice priest. It takes things in Zen kind of move slowly in a sense. My teacher he's rigorous, right? He doesn't just give you stuff, right? He wants you to really become clear, right? Before, you kind of move on to the next level. And when I say next level, I kind of mean next capacity to serve, right? So I am not a teacher. I have a meditation group that is local. We are just restarting it again. COVID kind of really shut us down for a little bit. It's called Empty Circle Meditation. And we've got a website, emptycirclemeditation.com or .org, and a little Facebook page and stuff. So we're hoping to be back in action in person, hopefully by the end of this month. I'm still speaking with the place that we use, the space, to make sure we're working all that stuff out, because it's a place where they teach karate and stuff. And so we've got to really respect regulations in COVID. Yeah. So a novice priest means that I am learning to be a full priest, and that takes some time. Maybe we can stop there. See if there's any questions.
I feel like I'm going to say something offensive at some point. I just already feel it. And I don't mean to, but I just can't help myself sometimes.
Say it.
Do you get to marry people when you're a Zen priest? Is that like part of the... That's the only thing I know priests do. They give out communion and marry people. So what does that include?
Yeah. So, okay, what is a priest? How about that? And we'll get into that. So, to me, in my mind, so go to the Zen Center, practice, you show like a level of commitment, and then the teacher may ask you if you want to take the next level of commitment, and that's something called jukai. And that's when you take these precepts, which are vows, right? And they're great vows, like don't kill, and
that's nice.
Yeah, and one of the ones I like a lot is to not engage in talk that lowers other people, to elevate yourself. That's like a sin.
Tough.
Yeah, it's very, very tough. Especially being a manager at work. I'm like an assistant principal where I work, and so it's like part of my job is literally to do that at certain times. But that is the practice. And then a couple years after that, my teacher, I'd started a meditation group. He wanted me to do that, and I did that. And so becoming a priest was another way to be able to serve. So I kind of look at it as a demotion. Just what I say is the way I look at it, because what we do is we kind of keep the space for people to meditate. And oftentimes we're putting that job before our own practice. That becomes our practice. So we'll be running around behind the scenes a little bit, getting everything ready and holding these traditions that have been passed down for thousands of years. And we're kind of the keeper of that, and serving the meditators first, and then we get to meditate. So that's my take on it. So do I get to marry people? Not quite yet. If somebody asked me to marry them, I'd have to ask my teacher, and he could give me a little more training on that and decide whether he wants to allow me to do that yet, sign off on that. But once I receive Denkai, which is full priest, I should be able to do all those things, funerals, weddings, things like that.
So I haven't decided if I'm going to make his voice high-pitched when in the post-edit or if I'm going to make ours lower. But something's got to happen. Just to get off topic here for a second, we did a meditation podcast. That was our first one.
Our very first one.
And we probably, I have not listened to it in a long time, but it's probably pretty rough at this point. And another thing I did need to mention is that Sarah gave us a donation. So this episode is brought by Sarah and Julie. They're
you,
like
Sarah.
sponsors,
Thank
right?
you, Julie. Wow.
And for anybody wondering, we do not make $1 million. Billy and I are not going to buy a yacht anytime soon. We have decided, though, that, there's some money involved in podcasting and in equipment, upkeep, and, whatever else that it might be. But we're not going to get rich off of this. And so the donations that come in, if they don't need to be used for any podcasting things, we're going to invest them back into the community. We're not here to make $1 billion. So anybody that wanted to donate or thought about donating, just wanted to let you know that that's our goal and mission, to continue using this as a vehicle for help. And now we can get back to the meditation topic.
So, I think interestingly for me, and I think Jason as well, was raised Catholic. So our understanding of what a priest is comes solely from, Catholic priest. That's what we knew.
Do Zen priests like little boys too? I'm sorry.
I'm not aware of that being much of a problem. No, but I mean, but in Zen there is controversy as well.
Really?
Sometimes, student-teacher relationships, have become unhealthy. Zen is not immune to controversy. That's for sure.
From the human failings.
Yes.
Human shortcomings.
Sorry,
they get everybody. They even get the Zen priest. Damn it.
Yeah, being human, right?
But so like for myself, similarly, as I was growing up, I never felt like the Christian religion philosophy fit me very well. I just I had a lot of questions, and I looked into a lot of, I guess you'd call it, Asian, beliefs, Zen, and I didn't know that. Eastern. I never get the politically correct terms right.
I don't know if it's politically correct.
It might be wrong nowadays.
I think Asia's a place.
Yeah,
it is.
But I found them interesting, and sort of got introduced to some of those practices early when I first was introduced to recovery, because part of the steps, one of the steps, the 11th step, talks about prayer and meditation. And so I explored some of that. I think in treatment, we did like some guided meditations where you laid on the ground and they played some happy music and you did different things like that.
What?
Happy music.
Right. What the hell is that?
You don't remember?
What is happy music?
Oh, like...
I think of like nursery rhymes or something.
Nursery
Kumbaya?
I guess relaxing music,
Okay,
like
relaxing.
spa music. Is that a better? I call it happy music. Puts you in a happy place. But like spa music or that usually instrumental with no words.
That is not what I thought of as happy music.
Oh no,
Waves in the background.
Yeah, that kind
That's
of
good
stuff.
stuff.
And
Why
then it
not?
would be some sort of guided meditation. That was my introduction to meditation.
Relaxing's
And
cool.
I never really understood or explored much of the different practices, that there are many different meditation practices. Later on in my recovery, I've gotten into some of that. I had a sponsor who was into Shambhala meditation, and then I explored some Vipassana meditation, and I guess now a big mindfulness is a big thing everybody pushes. Although I don't know if that is actually a practice or just something that people say because it sounds good. I practice mindfulness.
It's a thing.
Yeah.
It can almost be kind of a bad word.
Yeah, right.
When
That's
you
what
use-
I'm starting to feel like, too.
Yeah,
It's like,
it can be flung around a little too liberally.
it's become this
and
catch-all for people that want to do whatever they're doing and call it meditation.
It can be dangerous too.
Yeah.
Great. So now you're mindful of your problem.
Right. What are you doing?
Now what? Like my teacher has a book that he put out called Zen Beyond Mindfulness. And it's, the way I see it is kind of like, hey, mindfulness is great and it's not enough, right? Because, we've got these coping mechanisms and everything like that, and they're there for a reason. And now you're just mindful of this problem, of this pain, and people have had a really hard time with that if they don't know what to do with that. So
I feel like every problem we come to on this podcast involves what America or Western society has screwed up. Like, I feel like mindfulness is our selling of meditation to people in our society. It's like, oh no, it's mindful. It's not woo woo or Buddhism or none of that. It's mindful.
Right.
That's what, we just miss the point so often. I think Christians used to meditate, and like then somehow when it came over to us, now they don't anymore. So now we're like, oh, meditation, it must be Buddhism or something, or an Eastern philosophy. But I think all religions meditated at some point. I just think we've moved away from it in America.
I think it kind of depends on, definition of meditation, so.
Right.
Well, I mean, I know a couple Catholic nuns that are Zen teachers. Like, they've been doing Zen for over 20 years, and they've got recognition. They've got a seal of approval. You are a Zen teacher, like a Zen master. And they've been nuns for like 60 years, right? And so we've got Muslims come practice with us. A lot of Jewish folk. I don't know why. It's just it's interesting. And Christians and Buddhists and atheists, right? So, folks that are really not interested in anything that they consider dogmatic or anything like that, And so I think it's one of the interesting things about mindfulness, and I think it's great that it's here in this country. It's just, it's really great that we've adopted this practice in this country to whatever degree it is. And there's going to be these times where the pendulum's going to swing back and forth, and it's going to be a cool thing. It's going to lose some of its real impact, and it can get strayed in different directions. But the fact that it's here is really positive.
So I got to ask dumb questions. Zen is a form of Buddhism in some sort?
Yeah. Okay. So it's a kind of practice in Mahayana Buddhism. So there's kind of these major schools of Buddhism. So right. Zen. So there's like the Theravadins, and you'll see more in like India and like Sri Lanka and things like that. And they usually are the ones wearing the orange, I believe. Yeah, they're wearing the orange robes. And, so in Mahayana is when you get, into Tibetan Buddhism is a form of that, and then Zen and some other types. And it's just, there's just some different approaches to it. Right. And Zen is an interesting one because it's so, on one level, it's supposed to be the simplest in a way. Well, we shouldn't compare, but it's supposed to be extremely simple, right? And then on the other hand, wow, is it complex? So Zen is full of paradoxes, and it's a really interesting thing because, there's this whole dualistic mindset, right? Where, if I have an idea, it's got to have an opposite, right? Or, there's a yes, there's a no, there's, there's all those things. And, how do we kind of step out of that for a minute?
So from my understanding, like Buddhism kind of flows in one very simplistic view in one of two directions. There's the Buddhist religion, but then there's a lot of people or things that practice Buddhist philosophy without the religion. Is Zen more of the religion side of that, or no?
Well, it depends on what you're considering a religion. So, I mean, there'll be Zen masters, like, very well known. One day they'll say it's a religion when they're asked in an interview. The next day they'll say it's not. I think it depends on who's asking, right? And what they're bringing forward when they mention religion. So, to go back to like, your experience with Catholicism and things like that. So with Zen, one of the things that connected me to it the most is there's is great doubt. You're encouraged to doubt everything. The Buddha was supposedly have said, don't believe anything I say. And I'm like, okay, I can get into this. Because, I'm challenging all this stuff. And, there's this kind of three things that are really important in Buddhist practice. That's great doubt, great faith, and great determination. and just to doubt everything to the fullest, question it all, and have determination that you'll find out. And then you get some faith in this process.
I don't know if I believe in that philosophy of doubting everything. Just saying.
You don't have to. So you can doubt that philosophy.
Yes, I doubt that works.
But there's a lot of people in recovery who, and they come to me a lot, who struggle with the idea of God, uppercase G, God, right? And there's people that really want to compare themselves out of the program because of that. And I understand that, and I've been to meetings. This is AA, where not all AA meetings, but I've been to a couple in early recovery where they were doing the Lord's Prayer at the end, right? And okay, that's great for people that's great for, but that can feel very exclusionary to some, right? And so Buddhism, especially Zen, I feel like it kind of helps. It's helped me resolve that and find a definition of that I can't think my way out of, and that fits me. And step 2 really helped me do that.
So I'm interested in the meditation aspect, right? I think for my life, I believe in meditation. I think it's a huge portion of my recovery and my well-being and my, what we like to call self-care or whatever it is. I think it's crucial for the fact that my brain does not shut the fuck up by itself. And so I need to find ways of combating or coping with that. My struggle has been, since the very first time I was introduced to any proper with the quotes, of course, meditation, I'm a guy who grew up with some stuff that makes me want to do things the right way possible. Yeah. And it's a struggle for me because the right way possible honestly doesn't always fit my life very well. So I read a book. I have no idea what form of meditation or what branch it was, but I read a book and I was like, oh, this posture it describes must be the right way, right? It's in a book. And so it was like, sitting cross-legged, straight back, most of the staples of meditation. This particular book was like tongue on the roof of the mouth, lips slightly, open, eyes almost fully closed, but not fully, slightly downcast view, 4 to 6 feet
Very
in front
specific.
of you. It was, right? And I tried to follow it to the best of my ability. And I did all right. I do find I run into a lot of back pain trying to sit in that posture, right? And it's been a struggle for me. And so that has actually been one of the things that has held me up from meditating at different times. Lately, I've tried to be more lenient because what I did was I was like, oh, well, I'll just find a way, that my back doesn't hurt. But then it's like, oh, well, I'm not doing this right, right? I'm not doing it well enough anymore. And then I just start downing myself and all that. So anyway, that's a lot to say. I'm running in my 8 minutes now, right?
No, that's all good stuff. Those are all legitimate concerns that I think most of us have had.
Right. Well, but then I talked to people about it, and I'm like, and we've had a conversation online at some point, and you were like, oh, if you're not doing 20 minutes, it's nothing, or that probably wasn't the exact word, but I was like, I was so offended, goddammit, because I was only doing 12 at the time, or something, and it's just all these particulars, and I'm like, what matters? What's the real important thing? And so every time I run into people who know more about meditation than me, I talk to Jenny a lot. I was interested in asking you. Right now, I happen to be lucky enough to have another meditation teacher that I see once a week. That's pretty awesome. And so I just always want to ask these questions. Like, let's delve into the meditation truths. Like, what really matters to get the benefits?
Truths.
And so before you answer that, I just want to say my introduction to meditation couldn't have been more opposite of that. I had a sponsor who was big into meditation. He did this Shambhala, and he would go on retreats for like weekends, and he would say, "Look, if you want to start, just go outside at night when the moon's out, stare at a tree for 10 minutes. Just do that. Just go sit outside." So he said, "Start there. If you can get there,
that's a good place to start.
then we'll start." working on other stuff later.
That's a good place to start.
So,
I wish I could be easier on myself.
so I didn't go into meditation with any of those preconceived. I'd be thinking too hard about where's my tongue? Is it on the roof of my mouth? I need a protractor to figure out my eye angle.
Yeah, definitely. You need to just put an X on the floor in front of you. And you're like,
surveyors with the orange vests and
Measuring out
stuff.
how many feet.
Those mysterious things that they look through. Who knows what they actually do?
Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, Dave, tell us the right way to meditate, since we don't know.
The right way.
Fill us in.
Not sure there's a right way, first of all. So I'm hoping whenever I said the thing about the 20 minutes, I'm hoping I said that it is, I hope I didn't say that you're wrong if you're not doing that. I'd be really surprised if I said that.
I'm going to have to look back now.
But no, look back. And if I did, then I will make a public apology. But what I hope I said, and what I usually say, I know this for a fact, is that, my teacher teaches us too. I mean, any amount is good, right? To start to kind of receive the full benefits, I suppose. A lot of that stuff starts after 20 minutes. Mm-hmm. So I think it is a healthy goal to work up to. And it doesn't mean that 2 minutes is not can totally change your day.
Right.
If stuff's getting heavy, I work in a very dynamic place. We started a boarding school for inner city kids from Baltimore, and they all, they bring a lot. I'll put it that way. Mm-hmm. And we got a lot of passionate staff. So what I'm saying is that you can imagine that environment and the passion involved in that and where that passion can take us. So if I just stop and take 2 minutes sometimes, that can mean the difference between me getting myself fired or saying something that's really helpful in helping a situation. So, there's no strict time guidelines. Now I will say through my experience, at around 22 minutes, I don't want to say a bunch of stuff that's going to make people seek out this exact moment. But for me, I've been doing this a while now, and I go on retreats, where we meditate from 5:30 in the morning till 9 at night. Ooh. There's some breaks in there for sure. But, and you do that for a bunch of days in a row, you kind of start to see your patterns. And at about 22 minutes is when, at least when I'm first starting in a retreat or sitting at home around 22 minutes, maybe 18 minutes, is when things kind of open up. So, to kind of get back to your question a little bit more, the tongue thing, yeah. and your mouth slightly open, your eyes. So, those can kind of be more like suggestions. So something like the tongue, as I understand it, that the reason for that is because when you're sitting for a while and all of a sudden you're salivating and you're swallowing and you start thinking about salivating. Am I swallowing loud because I'm in the quietest place in the world right now? And this amazing stillness happens when you meditate long enough. And it's just it's almost like a light, yet thick, yet airy, yet it's all these things in the stillness. And then talk about hearing a pin drop and having that just be these, and so you're sitting there swallowing, choking on your, and so things like putting your tongue on the roof of your mouth may help.
It doesn't help me. I have this exact problem because I swallow way too much. I actually asked the other meditation guy this. I was like, how the fuck do you stop swallowing so much? I get so much spit in my mouth and I feel like it interrupts my meditation. And I'm like, what the hell? You can eat a cracker before I meditate?
I don't know. That'd make it worse.
That'd make it worse.
So but one of the things is to not obsess over that. And that can help relieve that, because when you're thinking about it, you're going to make it happen. And that is not just that, it's like an itch too. So I believe it's important to not scratch an itch.
Right. Lean into it.
Kind of just be with it. Yeah. Right. And to not worry so much about the swallowing and the itchiness and some of the pain, right? Because taking that, it's important to be able to take this practice off the cushion. So you're on the cushion, you're practicing, but if you're not able to take some of those skills into your life, then kind of what's the point, right? So something like the itch and all those other things that you want to react to, think about all the things, the little things, the big things that you want to react to, in your life. And it's amazing when I get a real bad itch, I got kind of dry skin, it's wintertime, I get a real bad itch and I just take a breath and I just notice it. I just put all my focus kind of on it, not to change it,
Right.
Not to change it, just to be with it. You know, often it just like gives up, pop, just like goes away. But when I'm like, it's getting worse, and that can translate to so many things in your life, right? Just that person that just irks you, right? Or that thing that somebody said, you know, and like I want to react,
right? That need to react to a thought. Yeah.
You sit there and stare at the floor for 30 minutes with like the worst itch in the world and don't react. You cannot react to a lot of things.
Right.
you build up a tolerance, right? So the eyes, it is kind of suggested that they're half open and you look somewhere on the floor, you know. And one of the reasons half open is because if we close our eyes, it's really easy to go off into la la land. You know, next thing you know, I'm out in outer space, flying around, whatever it is, whatever your thing is. You know, so if your eyes are wide open, it's real easy to be looking around, right? And so just kind of a half gaze, looking down at a spot on the floor. So you kind of just somewhere in the middle, right? And breathing is real important for many reasons, like living, but also, you know.
I'm addicted to breathing, personally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just can't quit. So, you know, you want to breathe through your stomach as much as possible. What that means is when I take a breath in, my stomach goes out. When I take a breath out, my stomach goes in. And if you really pay attention to that throughout your day, most people that I talk about this with, they'll notice, and including myself, that I'm doing the opposite, right? I'm breathing in, my stomach's going in, breathing out, stomach's going out, right? And that's like a lot more work for like, I feel like less air, right? And that sends a lot of signals to like the back of your brain, right? That causes, that's like the fight, flight, the survival stuff, you know, and it starts kind of stressing out and panicking and sending these other signals to the front of your brain where you're trying to make sense of it. And next thing you know, like that thing that person said, I mean, it was messed up and they shouldn't have done that, is having this like huge physical effect on me, you know, and it's not getting any better. And like, then I'm like, wait, watch my breathing. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm barely breathing and my stomach is all tight. Just kind of take that breath and, you know, it kind of like calms down. I believe it kind of calms down that kind of primitive brain part there, which really calm everything down and get that kind of executive functioning on board. So breathing is real important. So focusing on the breath is a really great practice because you're pretty much always breathing. It's always there and it helps get you more present. So you want to talk about posture at all or anything?
Yeah,
mechanics?
Throw it out.
So you are allowed to sit in a chair if you want. Like, please, if you need to sit in a chair, sit in a chair. What
about laying down? I think Jason wants to lay down, right?
Well, so the meditation guy that I'm working with now, he learned in the yoga nidra practice, which is laying down flat on your back. And he said, it's not the only form of meditation he does, and he kind of feels like he gets slightly different benefits out of the different forms. He says in a seated posture, he feels like it's more for focus for him, and the laying down yoga nidra posture is more for like body scanning and sensations and relaxation and that kind of stuff. But that's his formal training is there.
Okay.
So I do like the laying down. This shit is fucking great. I don't ever dread.
Laying down's cool.
Yeah, I don't ever dread going into that meditation. It's always cool. But I've found that I can sit on a couch in meditation posture as long as I have like that cushion at my back. It's not like I'm like pressed into it, but as long as it's there, it doesn't hurt at all. And I'm like, well, fuck it. I'll do it on the couch then because that works.
Yeah, and that's fine. So for Zen meditation, which is called Zazen, being alert is super important. I mean, we want to be focused, awake, and alert. We do not want to drift off, right? And I don't want to say that in like a conviction way, like like trying to push that away, like drifting off, because that doesn't work. Because then it makes it worse, right? But it's about attention and the clarity that comes with that attention and how much things just kind of open up when you have that attention for a period of time and you keep doing it. So laying on the ground and those practices, I don't really know much about those. I mean, I understand body scans and I use them. I teach them to kids, that I'm working with who are really stressed out, and there's definitely a use. With Zen, like we're supposed to keep it simple, but then like you got all these instructions. It sounds like you read a book about Zazen. Right? That's like Zen instructions. So it's very simple, but yet your tongue's on the roof of your mouth and all this stuff, you know? So these are more like suggestions. So the seated posture, sitting up, has just been kind of determined that for many people, most people, that's the best way to stay alert, right? And so if you're sitting in a chair, that's fine. It's suggested that your feet are flat and that you are not sitting back in the chair, that your back is, you know, straight. But, you know, it's easy to go too straight, just slouch. Now, there's also the thing about pain, and that's a big deal, right? Slouching feels good at first, but boy, you're in for it. You're going to hurt. Overcorrecting, you know, that might make you feel proud and like a good meditator at first, but you're going to hurt. You know, once you fatigue those muscles, like, and you got 4 more days to go, you're just going to have to sit with some pain. So, you know, it's a middle road. And that's actually goes to Buddha's teaching.
Yeah.
The Buddha, you know.
The middle path.
Yeah. The middle path for real, right? Because I'm one that I have to test the extreme paths first to find my middle path. I've always been like that. That's what got me here, for better or worse. And the middle path is the best way. You know, the Buddha is said to have, you know, eaten 1 grain of rice, you know, a day for 2 years and stuff, and did these extreme aesthetic practices, you know, like clenching his teeth and like just squeezing, you know, for however long, and all these like extreme things until, you know, he kind of had his awakening moment where he like let go of that stuff and he just sat, right? So counting the breath is a good practice, especially in the beginning. And, you know, when you count your breath, you know, you can count on the in and out, or you can just count on the out. I'll kind of do that when I first sit for the day for just like a couple minutes. It kind of gets me, you know, to focus.
Definitely read a Zen book.
Yeah.
It was about counting.
I wonder what book was it? Do you remember?
I don't know, but he was talking about counting to either 7 or 21 for some reason. Like those were the specific numbers. And then he was talking about leading the horse along the edge of the cliff and stuff. This sounds very much like what you're saying.
Cliffs and like stuff like that sounds like Zen. There's a lot of like fall off.
I always heard count to 10.
10.
And then I heard what I found, and I've heard count on the in or out, but then I've also heard that you count on the break in between the breaths, because that tends to be most of the time when your mind wants to wander, is on that break in between the breaths. Like I'm breathing in, I'm breathing out, 1. Breathing in, breathing out, 2. So that works for me, like counting in that break between breaths, because that's when my head wants to go somewhere else.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm kind of the opposite. That's where I'm most at rest. So I'm kind of like in my mind. Don't do this out loud if you're in a meditation hall. But you know, in my mind, I'm like 1 on the out breath. Breathe in, 2, and a practice is, and it's a great intro practice, a very good like beginner practice, is to do that. And every time you have a thought that creeps in, you start over at 1. And if you make it to 10 without any thoughts or distractions, then you just start over at 1. And you know, you find a lot of times it's 1, 1, 1, 2, maybe, no, 1, you know. So here is the heart of this practice. Not saying all of Zen practice, but of this particular kind of beginner form I like to say it's like a workout, right? So it's about reps, and your mind is going to wander. If you fight that, you're going to make it worse. You know, it's kind of like the disease of addiction, right? If you're going to fight it, you know, you're going to lose.
Only in complete surrender, huh?
Yeah, you got to surrender. And so what surrendering looks like on the cushion is mind wanders, just kind of acknowledge it, you know, just kind of almost like, okay, I see. Yeah, I give it just a little attention, and then I return to the breath. Wanders, I see that, return to the breath, or counting the breath, right? Wanders, you do that over and over again, and like a workout, right? And some days it may be very frustrating. It will be. But what will happen over time is you'll get stronger in a sense. And it's not really about strength, but it's just kind of my analogy to working out. And you can't just go into the gym and, you know, you work out and stand in the mirror like, you know, swole, I'm shred. Right. So It's like that with this. What will happen over time in practice is you'll have these larger and larger times of clarity where there's really no like words in your mind. There's no kind of thinking. I don't want to say zero thinking at all because that's a whole other thing, but it seems like there's no thinking and you're just very aware. I could lead you guys in a real quick tool that I like to use. I don't know. It's kind of eye-opening. I'll put it that way to a lot of people that I do this with. And I didn't make this up. I learned this from somebody else. But you guys want to do this?
Yeah,
sure.
Okay, cool.
If you're driving, don't participate until you stopped.
Yeah, don't. So, and this is not a formal Zen thing or anything like this, but I find that it's a really kind of nice way to experience immediately like observing, your thoughts and observing things. So here's what we do. So you kind of take a deep breath from your stomach. Stomach goes out, breathe out, stomach goes in. And just do that a few times. Okay, and this is a podcast, so I don't want to get too lost in silence, right? So what you do is you can pick something that's far away, something that's really far away. For me, I can kind of see out the window. There's some trees over there, whatever's the farthest away for you, and just focus yourself on that. Just focus on it while you're breathing from your belly, and ask yourself, is that me? Just in your mind. Is that me? Now, of course, on one level, yeah, it is me because we are all things and we are boundless, but that's not really what we're going for in this one. All right, so that is not me because I'm observing that. Okay, so who is observing that? Well, let's kind of back up into this. So I'm looking at the tree. For this exercise, I'm not that. All right, so now I'm going to move to something a little closer, maybe halfway in between. I'm going to move to the wall in front of us. I'm going to ask myself, is that me? Okay, right? It's not me for this exercise because I'm the one observing that. All right, and you can move to your body now, maybe your legs, your knees. Take a couple breaths. Same thing. Ask yourself, is that me? You may be tempted to say yes, but what happens if you were amputated? You didn't have legs down there. Would you still be you? You can move to something a little closer. Your arms or your chest area, your abdomen. Is that me? Well, maybe. What happens if we close our eyes and this time we just observe our thoughts? Now, when we first sit down to observe our thoughts, often they stop, but they'll be back. Okay, so as the thoughts come back, just observe them and ask yourself, is that me? Let them come in and let them go. Now, if those thoughts are you, then who's observing them? And that's it. You're just left with that question.
I had to swallow.
You what?
I had to swallow.
That's okay.
I didn't notice if I swallowed it or not. So my struggle, and it almost gets back to what Jason was talking about with the needing to be right about stuff thing, especially with a lot of these, like, I'll call it like Eastern philosophical, like these questions about is it me and is it not me? I honestly get paralyzed in this place of like, I don't know. You tell me if it's me or not. Like, I don't know what the right answer is because I can intellectualize either of those as being right in any given, way.
Right.
And that's where I get lost with some of that. I overthink it. You know what I mean? I overthink it and overcomplicate some of that.
Who's watching the thinking? So, a big question is Zen is who am I? And I am not qualified to answer that question. So,
right. You weren't going to tell us. Now we don't know.
No, and that, you could sit for 20 years trying to, and that's one of the things that we're looking at is really, who am I? And, during a meditation retreat, at times you can have these, I've had these very clear experiences, right? Where it's perceived that I'm more than just this, right? Like, much bigger, much larger. And I don't want to describe these experiences too much because, that's not fair to others because people may seek them. But it's not like these like going outer space or anything like that. It's like this clarity, right? Where you're thinking, like the words stop, right? I remember my first meditation retreat, and it was like raining the whole time outside, right? And our teacher was sick, unfortunately. And so in Zen, one of the great things about Zen is that we've got this thing called Dokusan, or interview, where you go into a room, just you and the teacher, and talk. And they, a skilled teacher will kind of like push you around a little bit, not physically, but like, push your mind around a little bit and not give you any place to settle, right? If you think you know who you are and you go there saying that, guess what? Rug. Pulling out of under you, you're gonna fall, and that's kind of their job, is to keep pulling the rug out of under you. And what that does is helps free you from attachments into thinking you know who you are, right? Because we build this idea of ourselves, and when that idea of ourselves, when we feel like it's been violated, right? That's a lot of anger comes from that. It's our ego. Our ego gets bruised, right? And so, how do we? We have to live with an ego. But how do we kind of have a space where there's a bigger mind involved that, we're not owned by the ego, right? Because when that thing owns you, and look at the disease of addiction. I mean, when that thing owns you, right? And the steps kind of help us look at it. I mean, that's like the first step is we're literally looking at it, right? We're taking a look at this thing. And then it's like, by looking at it, we realize that we're not just that, right? Because before step one, many of us are just consumed by our disease. We are our disease, right? That was my experience. And the steps give us more and more distance from that. And it's always there. We can cash that check in it. And I could leave here and just dive right back into the disease if I wanted to, right? So there's some similarities with that in my mind with recovery and Zen.
Yeah. So how... obviously, you seem to practice pretty regularly. How does that work into your recovery now, in today's time? Like, is that an active part of your recovery? Do you consider that two different things, or do they work together?
They definitely work together. So, my sponsor talks about how we, during active addiction, our character can drop really, really low, right? But once we start doing the steps and, we start getting all the benefits of this, we don't stop. We don't need to stop at average, whatever average may be for you, like an average middle place. In fact, I think for many people in recovery, just kind of like floating in the middle ground, right? Just not growing is really dangerous for many of us, right? Because if I'm not growing, I'm going backwards, right? So where does it fit in? Really, recovery is like the roots, and you'll hear me share this frequently. For me, it's like the roots of like this giant, beautiful tree, and a tree can blossom and all these wonderful things, blossom out of this, my family and life and Zen and all these great things. But it's the roots. Recovery is the roots, because if I ignore my recovery, and there's times where I've kind of not been very involved, right? And then it's hard for me to even make it to the cushion, right? Then everything else starts to get darker and more distant. And so it's an extension, in a sense, of my recovery, in a way. And it's kind of, to me, it is, for me personally, I'm not selling it as this is for me, is like, I don't want to like get into this dualistic talk about one's better than the other or anything like that, because it's not about that at all. For me, recovery being the roots, this foundation, Zen is looking deeper into the matter for me. It's related. It's part of the same kind of question, right? It's just taking it further. For me, that's my spiritual practice, and that's what is working for me in that way. But, I won't survive if I ignore recovery. If I faded away from Zen for a little while, I could probably come back and still be alive, right? But recovery is the roots. And if I don't take care of those roots, everything else suffers.
And for myself, my practice of meditation is, I'm going to say, the way I look at it, and I've never had formal teaching, but in my addiction, I realized like that idea of like first thought wrong. Like most of the time, my impulse and my first thought, to react to my feelings, is going to get me in trouble. And through meditation, and I learned this idea through an app. It was called Headspace, which I don't know specifically which, Andy Pudicomb's the guy's name, but I don't know what specific practice he teaches, if any, in that app. But it was this picture of like all this traffic out on a highway, and you walking out into the middle of that traffic, and that sort of traffic is my thoughts that are flying around in my head. I got all these thoughts going around, all the time, and I'm standing in the middle of it, all caught up in it. And what I need to do is kind of step back out of that traffic, get out of the middle of it, and sort of just observe it. I can just observe it. I don't have to be reacting to it all the time.
I thought you were going to say Frogger is meditation.
Yeah. Dodging all the cars.
Right, where are we going with this? I like this.
Later on now in my life, what I've recognized is that, to keep up with that metaphor, is that like not all my thoughts deserve equal value or attention. For example, some of my thoughts are just bad thoughts. You know what I mean? When I start thinking like, oh, you're dumb and you're a piece of shit and you shouldn't try and you're going to fail and that stuff. Like now I recognize like, oh, that's like the piece of shit old rust bucket car that's barely making it down the road. Whereas more positive thoughts like, hey, you should really try to be, do a loving act of kindness towards your kid today. That's like the Ferrari, you know what I mean? And by stepping back and recognizing which thoughts have or should have more weight in my life, I can put my attention more to those thoughts. And meditation's kind of helped me to recognize that and to kind of get out of the middle of like just reacting to all my thoughts.
I'm going to doubt that.
Yeah.
Well, at times though, right? I mean, you're going to get swept away by thoughts.
Oh, for sure.
There's times where your practice is going to come in and help you not do that. And thoughts are not the enemy.
Right.
That's one thing that people can get really hung up on is I should have no thinking in meditation, and now you got two problems. You got the thinking, and I should have no thinking. And it's all those shoulds too. Beck, the psychologist said, then you got to be careful because you're gonna should all over yourself, right? Should in your pants, should on the floor, right? So, that sounds really good, and you'll hear it like clouds coming through in your mind and coming in one side, and just let it go out the other. And not being owned by this thinking. So in Zen, we often talk about small mind and big mind. And I'm not qualified to teach about big mind. I have an idea about small mind though. And that's kind of being a slave to our rationalizations and our logic. And there's more to us than that, right? Because we can rationalize, especially as people in recovery, we can rationalize ourselves in and out of anything. Right. At least most people I know, because look at the things that we did, right? Look at the life we lived at one point back there in active addiction. Wow, what a power of rationalization you must have to think yourself into that, right? There's way more to us than just simple logic that can be used for good or bad. And, meditation can really help see that,
I've heard women complain about small mind.
So that's why you got to practice.
Right. Practice. It sounds like you kind of, I don't want to say stumbled upon, but came upon Zen meditation practice and felt like that was the one for you. Did you explore first? Did you check out a bunch of different ones? Or
I had, when I lived in Baltimore, I was going to a Shambhala center. And it seemed great. It seemed nice. It was just, and then I sat with that one psychologist. And then what drew me to Zen is that, my teacher will say it's a warrior's practice, right? And he has decades of martial arts experience with the sword. He went to Japan to study sword as well and ended up that's where he got into Zen. And so being a Marine and some of my first experiences kind of entering that space where I'm not controlled by my thoughts and it's this big kind of stillness was shooting in the Marines. And we get to this point where I wouldn't even hear the round go off. I would hear the inner workings of the rifle, right? In such a zone, everything just opens up. You could have come and kicked me in the side and it would have been okay, right? Because I'm going to take the shot with perfect clarity, right? And I love that space. I love that space. And I had a tool to do it, right? And so the guided meditation, we don't really do that in Zen. We don't. I'm not aware of anybody doing that. And that's fine. It's great. I'm not criticizing it. For our practice, it becomes something to hold on to. And we don't want to hold on to anything as best we can, right? We want to kind of let go of all of it. And so, getting into Zen, I don't have the rifle to do that anymore, right? And, I was into extreme sports. Like I took all the extreme sports as extreme as I could to the brink of death, like parachute, like skydiving, and it wasn't enough anymore. So I remember I packed my chute, like I packed it half right, and the rest of it I just shoved it in there, which is a very specific way you fold a parachute. So it'll open up when you're going 100 miles an hour towards the earth, right? And I was like, you know what? This is getting boring. And you would jump out and just to like get that clarity, right? Just to get that, it almost didn't open. It was like stuck in the bag. And then it did open. There is a reserve. But anyway, so how do I get that kind of clarity just staring at the floor? Just sit down and stare at the floor, and that's different. And so Zen, and also my teacher, so there's Zen places where they might be wearing shorts and t-shirts and stuff, and that's cool. Our place holds a lot of the practices in a very similar way as the monastery. There's a monastery in New York called Zen Mountain Monastery, and they're kind of professional Buddhists. I mean, they're monks, right? They're monastics, and so we're connected with them, as far as like a lot of our practices and things like that. So it's also kind of like the military, right? Because this is casual wear. Right. So this is literally the casual wear. When I go to a normal Sunday there, I mean, I've got like 4 layers of stuff, a big robe, and, everything you do, you've got to like just walking into the Zendo to the space. I've got to walk in with my left foot, bow towards the altar. And when I leave the space, I got to left step out with my right foot. I mean, everything has a thing, right? And it's that attention that brings to every movement, everything that you do. That is uncomfortable and weird and nerve-wracking at first, but once you get into that flow. And so, for Zen, I kind of like that order that it has, because I'm a pretty chaotic person. And so something about the order in the warrior's practice and sitting strong, and you get hit with a stick too, I walk around with a stick and whap you, to wake you up. It's the stick of compassion, or the encouragement stick. And I'm a Marine. I'm always going to have empathy. I'm always going to be a Marine
that sounds
too.
like a Marine thing.
Yeah. Well, in America, you got to ask for it.
Yeah.
I think I believe in Japan sometimes they'll just walk around and whack you with it, but Americans get sued and stuff.
Oh.
But, so you'd be sitting there quiet for like a half a day or something. It was just stillness, and all of a sudden, whap, over on the other side of the room. And if you were in La La Land, even if you didn't get hit, you're not in La La Land anymore. Just hearing that, attention, right? Attention. And
the old club of compassion.
Yeah, right.
No, but I don't want to focus too much on the stick, but it is a thing in Zen that
we
people are
want
going
to
to
talk
ask
about the
about.
stick.
That people are going to ask about. So you ask for it. You got to ask for it, and you bow. And there's these pressure points here that you hit, and it kind of just sends a jolt of energy to your brain. And when you've been sitting there all day, day 2, day 3, like you're ready. Really, just wake me up, please. So
If someone wanted to get, introduced or find information about Zen and the Zen practice, what would you recommend? Where they start, or would you just show up someplace, or?
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, I'm making it right now sound all hard and scary and stuff like that, but it's really like the nicest people ever.
Yeah,
It's everybody like on their best. like at almost all times, right? And it's very welcoming. It's just when we sit still and we sit in silence. And sometimes there's a stick, but you don't have to partake in that, right? But so my group is local, and Empty Circle Meditation, and our website's emptycirclemeditation.com or .org. And
Facebook page still, right?
We do, and I think that's a really good place because I'm not a sensei, I am not a roshi, I'm not a high level teacher. I'm not a teacher at all, but I can teach you basic, zazen, basically what we're talking about, right? And very welcoming, very open. And you'll see that, or you can just go to the Zen Center that I'm a part of, Soji Zen Center in Lansdowne, PA, website also, sojizencenter.com. And everybody there's so welcoming, so like nice and smiling at you and everything like that. But when it's game on, everybody's sitting quiet and they're focusing as hard as they can, right? You could just show up. If you were going to go to Soji, you can always look me up and I'll plug you in. Sometimes I called before I went, so there's a number on the website you can call and somebody will call you back and talk to you and just kind of give you the lowdown. Because when you walk in, it can, especially Soji, not my place, I don't think, but Soji, it can kind of look a little intimidating, right? Because you got these people in robes and stuff like that. There's people that aren't too. There's lots of people that aren't. But once you kind of like say hi to somebody and everybody's like, oh, you're new here, how can I help you out? They're smiling and like, oh, you do this, it's like this, don't worry, don't be scared. If you make a mistake, it's all right. Everybody will kind of give a little chuckle inside, and correct you, and it's all good. It just looks serious.
Then they'll hit you with a stick.
Yeah, right. Then you get hit with a stick.
Yeah.
If they don't meditate and force contact me instead of calling me, I don't want it. That's all I'm saying.
No. But it's all safe to show up. And you'll get lots of good advice on body and the pain, how to navigate the pain. And you're allowed to move, right? I mean, if you go to the monastery for a retreat, they'll have somebody that says, don't move, but you're allowed to move where we are. So people get worried about, what if I'm in pain? Am I going to feel bad about moving? No. The goal with the pain is if it's like a dull pain, it's just to notice it and be with it for a little while, right? Instead of like pain, move, right. And then like everything is movement, right? If you're feeling sharp pain, please move your body. We don't want you to get hurt. I had knee surgery because of this. Like I literally, all the things I've done, Marine, rock climbing, guide, snowboarder, whatever, all that stuff, like I've taken as far as I felt like I could. I never hurt my body, maybe besides the broken fingers or something, but I tore my meniscus meditating.
I feel this as an aging thing. I get it. Like that would be, I got hurt sitting.
But it was me though. I was sewing my robes when I was about to be ordained, and I was leaning forward while sitting in that position, and I was pushing it too hard and like sweating through it and being a Marine about it. And now I got like a little bit of a trick knee, and like there's my lesson. Middle road, right? Middle road. I didn't have to do that, So
what form of meditation is horseshit?
What form is horseshit?
Walking meditation, dishes washing meditation. Like what form of meditation is just not real? And
dishwashing meditation might be better than all of them.
I mean, I've done walking meditation.
Right.
I don't know if it's real. I used to try it in the morning.
It definitely is. So we do walking meditation every day. So in Zen, here's what it looks like. So you'll sit 30 minutes, walk for about 8. And then at the 10-minute mark, we should already be seated, and we'll do another 30-minute sit. In my group, we'll do just 2 30-minute sits with walking meditation. At Soji Zen Center, you'll do 3. But the walking meditation is super important because you're meditating while you're walking. What you're doing is you're practicing taking your practice off of the cushion. It's one thing to sit there in stillness in this beautiful environment of minimalism and like whap,
right.
But now how do I walk around and do that? And that's practice to take it out into the world. Not only that, it helps us stay focused because we are about attention in ours. We're not about La La Land or going off on these trips, which they might be effective for some people. I don't really understand it that much. We're about attention. So we'll get up and walk for 8 minutes in silence, sit back down, attention.
So would you, what I got out of that was maybe the trips to outer space version of meditation is the one you find the least useful or helpful.
I don't know. I don't know enough about it, I suppose. I mean, there's this whole like psychedelics thing coming on right now and stuff like that, where people are real into like using it to like connect to this part of them, the space or whatever, not outer space, but like whatever it is, and to shift their consciousness and things like that. And, maybe that's for some people. The way many of us in Zen, I think I read this in a Sam Harris book. We don't need to change the lighting. We don't want to have to change the lighting and the way things look to be able to have that clarity and that kind of open boundlessness.
Right.
We just stare at the floor and do it with clarity. And being in recovery, I could see both, right? And for me personally, kind of experiencing that and clearing out my mind with clarity is better for me. Because man, when you do that with clarity, it's beyond words. And that's the thing about this practice and this is why I'm not a teacher yet, someday probably, hopefully, but is because to be able to put that stuff into words, it's without words. And so it's a very special skill to kind of be able to kind of point to it with words, right? And I don't have that skill yet. I don't have the stamp of approval yet, and rightfully so, right? When you talk to somebody who's a teacher, and you're like, wow, okay, like I don't know, I can't do that yet.
What's the Zen rule about farting in meditation? Because mind is kind of like, don't force it out, but if it's there, be with it and let it go.
Yeah. Well, I think farting is probably good. It's all good practice, right? So, like, yeah, I mean, maybe you don't want to maybe you want to hold it if you're sitting next to people, but we got incense burning, right?
And,
So every once in a while, I wonder if the incense is always there because
that's what it's for.
or like
to cover
the sweating, because I'll be in 4 layers of stuff, 4 thick layers of clothing in the summer, and no amount of air conditioning is going to cure that on like a humid summer day, and you're sweating. I'm like, I wonder if way back in the day they started that because the BO might start to maybe. But like to go to that and to go to like washing dishes meditation, that's really good practice. Like that, I'm not qualified to say better or worse. I mean, but that's really good practice. Really good. Doing the dishes and being present with that. Like that's where the rubber meets the road. For real.
If you want to be present, brush your teeth with your non-dominant hand. That is fucked up.
Okay. Maybe that's a good little practice. I'll try.
It's interesting. It'll make you think.
Just don't hurt yourself.
I definitely think I'm at a point in my life where I could use some more formal meditation practice or education. I've been meditating for, probably 3 or 4 years on a regular basis now. Now I'm only doing 10 minutes every morning because it fits my schedule. I know I'm not even doing it right.
Minutes. I've been doing 20 ever since Dave made fun of me.
Well, so here's was my experience, which is why I've just stuck with 10 most recently. I was doing 10, and then I got to 15, and then I got to 20. And to make a commitment, I do it in the morning when I wake up as part of like a morning routine. And like 20 minutes is now pretty close to like a half an hour, and that's adding a whole half an hour, which means getting up earlier and doing, it's a bigger commitment. And so when it got to that 20-minute mark, I found it harder to do, and I stopped and got out of it. And then, tried to get back in, tried to do 20 minutes and couldn't do it. So then I was able to work back in. So I was like, all right, we'll just start over. We'll start back at 10 minutes and just do 10 minutes. And that's worked really well. So I've been doing that for like a year, probably year and a half now, probably at least 5 or 6 days a week. And I feel like, I know, not that I should. It would be really beneficial to add in either a second meditation later in the day when I had 20 minutes or, to try to find more time. But, I'm same as most people. I'm raising kids. I try to exercise every day. I'm already getting up at 5 to try to add in another 10 or 15 minutes of meditation means getting up at like 4:30, which fuck that. 5 o'clock's already hard enough. And I just feel like trying to add another 10 minutes of something is difficult, and I haven't committed to it.
Well, I would just advise don't beat yourself up over not doing more, 10 is great. And 10 is certainly way better than none.
Yeah, it's better than none.
Way
That's
better
for sure.
than none. Way, because you're doing it. Now, the thing with doing 30 minutes every morning, or 20 or 25, is it's amazing. You may find, like many of us have, that you have more time in your day.
It's better managed, yeah. That's what my previous sponsor used to tell me all the time.
It's almost like miraculous.
That. Yeah.
Like I can't even logically put it in, like, why am I getting like 10 times the amount of things done with relative ease when before I would have been scrambled all over the place, right? It's amazing. And so, I mean, sometimes the question becomes, is the extra half an hour of sleep more important to me today than that? Some days it might be. I'm doing finals. I'm in grad school and I work full time plus, right? Sometimes that is. But, the suggestion is, is a good place is like 20 minutes twice a day. But certainly 10 minutes once a day is infinitely better than no minutes.
But yeah, I'm at a wandering spot now, so I need to find, because I've tried different apps and I've messed around with different stuff, and Sam Harris has an app. It does a Dzogchen practice. Yeah. He's real into Dzogchen, and that, I don't know. It's too smart for me. It's too heady.
My understanding of that and Zen has, from my limited understanding, there's some similarities. I don't know about in practice itself, but in this aspect of it, that a teacher is really great. I believe a vast majority of us can only go so far without a teacher, right? And here's the thing, because you might get to this point where you might have these experiences of clarity and everything like that, and not know what to do with it, and then it's just gone. And or maybe you think you do when you're not having these experiences of clarity, and then you're kind of really like all over the place because you're heading down a path that So a teacher, there comes a time where I believe a teacher is very important, and maybe you're there.
I think I am, because it's like I know meditation is beneficial. I know it's good for me when I do it, but I don't know why I'm doing it or what I'm actually doing.
You get to that point, Will?
They told me to do it in the steps, and nobody talks about it much in meetings, so I'm going to do this.
And Sam Harris talks about that practice, and one thing he said about it is, and just the way he put it, and I've heard this before all over, meditating communities, but he's kind of put it really directly and like straight up, is like, somebody that hasn't done all the practice before, getting to the kind of like higher level stuff, if they just jump to the higher level stuff, and maybe they do even have like this moments or whatever, and they'll be like, they don't know they're just like, so what?
Right.
What do you mean, so what? Like, I've been working 8 years, for that kind of clarity. This is so important. And the thing about it is this stuff is so subtle. Buddhism's known, at least from what I know about, there's a lot of these subtle shifts, and these shifts can be so subtle, but so changing, they're so subtle, they're easy to miss.
So I actually looked up this conversation, and I partially forgive Dave already, because my question that led to this answer
only partially
was a kind of dumbass question. So I was thinking about meditation, and I was thinking, we go into the gym and you don't just like put 300 pounds on the bench and do it once. Like, we do sets, right? And repetitions in these sets. Yeah. And so I was like, I had this epiphany that I should meditate in repetitions and sets, and it would be somehow better.
Yeah, I think I remember us talking about that.
Yeah. So, and I reached out. I was like, I asked him, because I heard he knew some shit about meditation. I was like, so hey, what if I meditated in like these 3-minute sets with like a minute space in between? Would that make me stronger meditating or whatever? And so that's where his answer came from. So I that was already a terrible question. But he didn't even say this was from him. He said, my teacher always told me that you don't really get the total benefit of meditation until at least 20 minutes.
Oh, so now you got to be mad at his teacher.
His next sentence was, I mean, a few minutes is better than no minutes.
It is, and that's where people start. And that's where people start, and getting access to the desire to do this is huge, right? It's like white key tag or something, right? Like, getting the access to get there is, gosh, without that, none of it exists.
So if you liked the short meditation sample that David did, and you think you are everything, read Conversations with God. And if you think you are not, you are the observer of everything, read The Untethered Soul. Both excellent books, and both very interesting in their direction they take it.
Well, there's going to be a big aspect of this that that we kind of are everything, right? But it's helpful at times to just to realize that we can silently observe, like our thinking, and that's what that exercise was about. Because I find with a lot of people it's a quick little shift. Mm-hmm. You'd be like, oh crap, like there's a whole me in there that is not like this chatter,
right?
Like, and that's what that was about, like. And so, like, I do that with kids at work, and like they come to me, they're like, "Can we do that again?" Like they're all stressed out, and now they realize that they can sit through, and and if you can't sit through some thinking and not get carried away with it every single time, then you're gonna have a harder time doing.
I wish I could find a meditation that worked for my kids. They think it's punishment if I make them meditate. They're like, "Oh God, really?" I'm like, "Yeah, come on, just like 3 minutes." Like, "Oh God, this is so terrible."
I think it was Eckhart Tolle that opened me to the idea that when we think, we're two people. We're the talker and the listener at the same time. And like one of the ways to try to help not get caught up in thinking is to try to actively only be the listener. Right, because then the talker shuts up.
Yeah, meditation's definitely made me a better listener. That's for sure.
Yeah. And any conversation, just try focusing on your breath during the conversation. That was the advice was given to me, and it's like when I do that, especially when I'm like getting ready to respond, I'm just waiting for them to finish so I can say some stuff that I think is smart. Just focus on my breath and really listen.
What I got out of today was that I've spent somewhere between 8 and 10 years thinking that there was some magical thing about multiples of 7 and counting your breath in 7 or 21, and apparently it doesn't fucking matter. It was an arbitrary number that I was given.
I think that 21, and I could be a little off on this, but there's like mala beads, and I think they can come in and they might like roll the beads in there, and so I don't know. I could be off on the number, but it might be connected to that.
This sounds like
I
the
don't really
Catholicism of meditation.
Right. I was doing the Hail Mary.
Right? We got rosary beads,
the rosary beads,
form and robes, and
well, I wear just one string of beads like this, and this is not. Lots of Zen practitioners will, even though it's really a kind of, as I understand it, more of a Tibetan thing. But the reason I do is because these dangling things hit me, and they can be a little annoying, and it's just a little reminder. And if I'm like really in like an intense situation, sometimes where I got to keep my mouth shut and it's really hard, I can kind of just take them and just kind of like hold them in my lap and just kind of some little mindfulness thing. But it doesn't really symbolize much as I understand it for us. But it is kind of, I just kind of like, grounding, right?
Is the goal to be grounded in groundlessness? Is that the goal? Or ungrounded anyway. Like, so I always want
not qualified to answer that question.
I want that answer. I keep asking everybody and nobody really knows.
Oh.
Well, because I hear like a lot of times in a different arena, we go for grounding and helping people be grounded, right? And I know there's like some benefits to that, and that's a great practice for that. But then, my concept of the little bit I know of the Buddhist philosophy is like to be okay exploring the ungrounded, because that's truly where we're at. Like, we don't really have any fucking ground at any point in time. This building could blow up, we all die, other people die, we love die. Like, don't be grounded. But I'm like, is that being grounded in groundlessness?
See, this is where words are the problem.
I like that.
This is where words become a problem, and this is where I'm limited in my use of words, because I don't have a deep enough understanding or clarity yet as somebody like my teacher or some of the most senior people that are at our meditation place. So yeah, that's starting to sound, just hearing you, that's starting to sound more like a problem of words.
I'm going to go seek out Thich Nhat Hanh, listen to some of his shit. He's probably got something on it.
He probably does. His talks are nice. They're very relaxing. They're very long. He talks very slowly like that, which is nice sometimes. But at our Zen center, our talks are typically around 20 minutes, something like maybe a little bit longer at times, but they tend to be very direct. Like, boom, here's the stuff, and like
they hit you with the stick. They hit you with the stick of
compassion.
words.
Of compassion.
So final thoughts. Sell people on the fact that meditation would improve the fuck out of their lives if they just started it. What easy, convincing, scheduling? Like, how do you fit it in? What is it that people need to hear to start them on this journey? Because I think all three of us would definitely agree meditation is hugely beneficial for our personal lives.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so sell them on it.
It's back to working out. It can be like this. If you are going to the gym every day and looking in the mirror half the time and just waiting for that stuff to grow, and you're like, maybe I'm a little bit bigger, right? You're going to be disappointed a lot, right? But when you go to the gym every day and you don't look in the mirror really that much, but you're working out diligently and you're taking good nutrition and you're doing it the right way, and then all of a sudden you might catch yourself in the mirror after 3 months, you're like, oh, look at that. I'm a little trimmer. I look a little development going on here. It can be like that with meditation. All of a sudden, like there'll be a situation where I realize that I would have reacted most likely poorly. And all of a sudden, with some level of ease, I didn't. And it was actually a beneficial exchange rather than one that I'm going to end up apologizing for. Or maybe it is all of a sudden for the ability for me to take time and put myself in somebody else's shoes, right? And see that they are a suffering person just like me, right? And to be able to really experience that with like deep empathy, it takes a certain amount of like quieting of the mind and ability to kind of like step away from the ego just a little bit, or maybe a lot bit, right? And there's also some immediate gratification for me is I can't think of any time where I have sat or I've meditated and come out of it worse. I always come out of it a little bit better or maybe a lot better depending on what's going on.
Right.
But I have yet to come out, sit and be like, now I'm worse. That has not happened.
That meditation fucked me all.
Yeah. Right. Ruined my day.
I want to take what David said and full force into parents. If you find that, from your own parents, you have a reactive parenting style, or you walk away from disciplining your kids or questioning your children in ways that don't make you feel good about yourself, fucking meditation has done worlds for me in that arena. To be able to just react with much slower, right? Just so where afterwards I can say, man, I thought through that before I said that to them, and thank the fucking Lord I did, because it was about to get ugly when they did that.
And to have a little bit of tolerance for mistakes and, things and things that would normally get me so upset.
And for kids, because kids are just idiots.
Drink or a mess not cleaned up and the blowing up over that stuff, to be like, just be able to sit down and go, hey, dude, I get it that you spilled something on the floor. You can't just leave it there. You got to clean it up.
How do I instill those kind of shifts for them a little bit?
Right.
Like shift in the way we're doing things, a little paradigm shift, right? Because I kind of work on that with myself, right? Stepping outside of my habits. Because our habits really are the things that can cause a lot of separation between us and others.
And even with our kids, like my kids won't, I've invited them to actively meditate and stuff like that. They don't seem too interested, but also they are fully aware that it's a practice that my wife and I both do. You know what I mean? That it's something that we do to take care of ourselves, just like watching what we eat and exercise and every day. We don't make them do those things, but they are aware that those are worthwhile endeavors, to undertake. I hope they observe those things for when they get a little bit older.
They don't do it because you don't have the stick of compassion to hit them with.
That's what
my girls love that.
I need, the stick of compassion.
They're like, and they hit daddy with it, and they clip my ear, and I'm like, oh, this is good practice. But my kids wax and wane with it. One good way I bait my kids with it, you can stay up a little later tonight if you sit with daddy. It's bedtime now, but if you want to come sit for 20 minutes, you can. They usually fall asleep, but then I carry them to their bed, and it's all cute and sweet, and I love it. I love those moments. Yeah, you got teenagers, so
they're up late. I'm up at 5, so I'm in bed by like 10 o'clock. They're up later than me most every night.
They need to be.
Yeah,
their circadian rhythms later.
Yeah. Anything else, Bill?
No, that's it for me.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Yes, thank you very much for coming on.
Your experience and your wisdom about meditation. Final thought, just can't say enough about meditating and what it's done for my life when I practice it daily, right? And that's I think the key words to all this recovery stuff. When I do it regularly and daily, it has a huge impact on my life, usually in very positive ways. So go out there and meditate. Did you like this episode? Share it with people you think might get something out of it. Check out the rest of our episodes at recoverysortof.com. Also, while you're there, you can find ways to link up with us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Reddit, YouTube, anything. We're always looking for new ideas. Got an idea you want us to look into? Reach out to us.